right, here's a story that really happened to me. This isn't just a tale, this is real life. I lost my son 2 decades ago, and every single Sunday, like clockwork, I'd go stand by his grave. Over those years, they started slipping by, but I still couldn't bring myself to delete his number from my contacts. Getting rid of it felt like losing him all over again. Then just last month, my phone starts ringing at 2:47 a.m. I check the screen, and there it is, his name flashing at me. I answered, my heart racing. That voice, I knew it immediately. Dad, where am I? It was him. The son I thought I'd lost forever was on the other line, sounding confused and scared, talking about how none of this made sense. So 2 decades ago, I laid my son to rest beneath this old oak tree at Riverside Cemetery. His name is Michael James Porter, born on April 12, 1986, and taken from us too soon on November 3rd, 2005, at just 19 years old. The funeral wasn't long, about 40 minutes, where about 30 people showed up. My boy's mom was next to me, but she seemed lost in her own world, barely acknowledging the casket. Her sister kept her grounded through it all. Some of Michael's friends came too, red-eyed and unsure of what to say, just offering quiet gestures to show they sympathized. As time passed, they stopped checking in. Within a few years, no one even said his name. That's how it is with loss. People move on, even if I couldn't. The accident happened on a Friday night. He was driving home after work when a truck barreled through a red light and slammed right into him. The police told me he didn't feel a thing. He was gone instantly. I got the call at 11:43 p.m. I remember because I glanced at the TV clock when the phone rang. A police officer was on the line, telling me there'd been an accident, and I needed to rush to County General. I didn't need him to spell out what that meant. Parents just know. I sped over there, pushing 90 mph without caring about anything else. When I got to the hospital, they led me to this quiet room, which confirmed everything. They saved those rooms for when it's really bad. They let me see him. His face was untouched, like he was just sleeping. His hand was still warm when I held it, and I clung to the hope for hours that maybe his chest would move again, but it didn't. His mom got there later and just fell apart, screaming so hard security had to hold her. They even sedated her. She couldn't handle identifying him or signing anything. That fell on me. I picked out the coffin, chose the plot, wrote his obituary, and selected the flowers. It all felt so foreign, stumbling through it in a haze. The funeral made the hospital visit seem easy. At the hospital, there was still a sliver of hope for a mistake, but at the funeral, he was actually being lowered into the ground. I could hear the machinery and the thud as the coffin settled on the earth. Other people threw flowers, and his mom added a heartfelt note. I stayed back, just watching. After everyone left, I stuck around. I watched them fill the grave with every shovel of dirt. By the end, I needed to be absolutely sure he was there. When they tamped down the final bit of earth, that's when I left. For 20 years, every Sunday I'd return, no matter the weather. I'd bring flowers, have a chat, go over my week, and say things I hadn't told anyone else. My son's mom stopped coming after a year. She said it was too hard and that she had to keep moving forward. 3 years after losing Michael, our marriage ended too, ripped apart by the grief. She moved on, met someone new, and had another kid. I couldn't move on. Michael's room stayed exactly the same. His clothes hung where he left them, books still on the shelves. I kept his phone number in my contacts, even continued paying $30 a month for a line that would never ring again, just so his number lived on somewhere. People suggested therapy or letting go, but I found my way. I learned to live, tiptoeing around the emptiness. You don't heal from losing a kid. You just learn how to walk alongside the void they leave. Going through each day, dealing with work, paying bills, and pretending you're all right becomes routine. But honestly, each birthday or holiday feels like a hard reminder. They're celebrations of happiness he will never get to share. His friends moved on, marking milestones like graduating, tying the knot, and having kids of their own. Meanwhile, my son remains forever 19, stuck in the past without ever becoming the man he was supposed to be. I accepted it because there was nothing else I could do. Dead is dead, right? That was my reality until the night of September 14th when, at exactly 2:47 in the morning, my phone rang, ripping me out of my sleep. Half asleep and bewildered, I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand. When I saw it, I almost froze. Michael's name appeared on the screen, complete with his smiling picture from his 18th birthday. A chill ran through my veins and my heart pounded like it wanted to escape my chest. The room felt colder, my hands quivering so much I nearly dropped the phone. Was this actually real? That number hadn't worked for nearly 19 years, kept saved in my phone only for memories, never expecting it to ring. Yet here it was, ringing insistently. One ring, two rings, and so on. 4, 5 times. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, frozen in disbelief. Could this be some heartless prank? Would there be anything at all if I picked up? On the 6th ring, though, I finally gave in and answered. The moment I pressed answer, I brought the phone to my ear. There was only silence for 3 agonizing seconds. Then came the soft sound of breathing, undeniably alive. My throat tightened, and I struggled to find my voice. Then a word. Dad. Just one word, but with so much tremor. It was his voice, my son's. I couldn't mistake it. I'd heard it every day for 19 years, and it echoed in my dreams for another 20. This wasn't a memory or recording. This was him speaking. I couldn't help but cry, tears blurring everything around me while I sat there speechless. Dad, are you there? He asked again, his voice tinged with a plea. Somehow, with great effort, I managed to rasp his name. Michael. It felt foreign coming out of my mouth. After a pause heavy with silence, he spoke again. Yeah, it's me. Where am I? Confused beyond measure, I replied, What do you mean? Where's this call coming from? His breathing on the other side grew erratic, tinged with panic. I don't know, he said. I don't know where I am. It's like nothing makes sense. Dad, something's off. His sentences tumbled out quickly, laced with fear that seemed incomprehensible. I scrambled out of bed, flipped on the light, trying to wrap my head around a situation that defied logic. Michael was gone. We'd laid him to rest. I'd seen his burial. Yet here we were, talking. Michael, what is happening? Where have you been all this time? My questions came out jumbled, all I could manage. Over the line, I heard him crying. I remember the crash, he said slowly. I remember the truck and dying. He paused, the memory raw with emotion. Then I woke up, and everything felt different. I felt different. It's all wrong. People don't see me. I found this phone. It's the only contact I could reach. Dad, please. I don't know what happened. My legs gave way, forcing me to sit heavily on the bed. Knowing Michael died, yet hearing him, was indescribably surreal. I asked softly, Are you hurt? It was a silly question, but even as logic crumbled, I searched for signs of understanding. I'm not hurt, just scared. Can you come for me? Please? His voice brought memories of him as a child, innocent and seeking comfort. Tell me where you are, I pressed. Any details? I'll come right away. But he could only manage. I'm in a building. It's dark. Looks like apartments. I'll try to find an address. I heard him move, footsteps, a door squeaking open. And just like that, the call abruptly ended. I sat there staring at my phone, seeing the call had lasted a little over 9 minutes. I tried calling again, but each time the same automated voice answered. The number was no longer in service. Over and over I dialed it, 15 times. Each time met with the same response. My son had called, needed my help, and then vanished once more. That night sleep was out of the question. I lay in bed clutching my phone like it held secrets, waiting endlessly for a call I knew would never come, until finally morning light seeped in through the blinds. She was a bit thrown by my request, mentioning it wasn't the norm, but I pressed on, giving a vague explanation of the situation. After being on hold for what felt like forever, she came back. I'm sorry, she said, but there haven't been any calls from that number since before your son passed. It was like hearing the world was upside down. Frustrated, I hung up and tossed the phone aside. The whole scenario felt unreal, yet I could still hear my son's voice, his fear on the line. That memory drove me to leap into my car and hit the road, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and desperation. As I sped down the lonely highway in the early hours, only the engine's hum and nagging doubts kept me company. What if I was following a ghost? Still, every mile gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, I'd see him again. When I finally reached the address, Riverside Avenue, Moorfield, West Virginia, it was the break of dawn. I dashed up to apartment 8, my heart racing, and hammered on the door. An old man answered, looking half asleep and puzzled. "Who are you?" he asked. For a second, doubt gripped me. Was I at the wrong place? Then a familiar face emerged behind him. My son, alive, bewildered, but undeniably there. Tears and laughter mingled in my throat, and when he caught my eye, there was no mistaking the spark of recognition. "Dad," he whispered. Overcome, I could only blurt out his name. Michael. There we stood, father and son, caught in a moment that defied all sense, trying to comprehend the miracle before us. It didn't matter how or why he was here. What mattered was he was. She questioned why I was calling, and I explained that I'd been receiving calls from that number. She put me on hold, leaving me waiting. First 5 minutes, then 10. When she finally returned, she sounded baffled. "Sir," she said, "our records show that number hasn't been active for 19 years. It was cut off in March 2006. No calls, no data, nothing." I was adamant. "That's impossible. I've had 2 calls from that number this week. Please check again." She placed me on hold once more, and a good 15 minutes later, a male supervisor came on. "Mr. Porter, I've personally checked the records. The number's been inactive for almost 2 decades. Our system doesn't show any recent activity. Is it possible you saw the number incorrectly?" Deep frustration bubbled up. "I know my son's number," I said strongly. "It's been in my contacts for 20 years. My call log clearly shows 2 calls from that number, both lasting minutes." The supervisor's tone softened, as though he thought I was delusional. "Sir, grief can often cloud our perceptions. Maybe speaking with a therapist could help. We can recommend someone." I hung up. Therapy wasn't the answer. I needed clarity. I documented everything. Screenshots, videos of my call log, dates and times. I needed solid proof I wasn't imagining things. Then I set off on an 8-hour drive to West Virginia, stopping only for gas and coffee. My mind buzzed with questions about what I'd find. Would Michael be there, or would it all amount to nothing? Maybe I'd find nothing but an empty spot, but I had to see. The address, 4247 Riverside Avenue, apartment 8, Moorfield, West Virginia, was etched in my brain. Plugging it into my GPS, it projected an 8-hour and 12-minute drive. I made it in 7 hours and 12 minutes, arriving at 11:47 a.m. The old apartment building I found at the end of town appeared to hail from the 70s, all red-bricked and weathered. But something felt off. The lower-level windows were boarded up, a padlock chain dangled from the front door, and a faded orange sign declared, "Condemned, no trespassing, scheduled for demolition." My stomach dropped as soon as I saw the place. It was completely empty, not a soul in sight. How on earth could Michael be here? I parked opposite, just sitting there, staring at the building for a good 10 minutes, unable to believe it. Was the address wrong? I quickly checked my notes. Nope, it was spot on, 4247 Riverside Avenue. I took a deep breath and got out. The fence around the place was made of chain links, with enough holes in it to let me squeeze through. The street was eerily quiet, nobody watching. I wriggled through one of the gaps and made my way over to the building. The front door was locked up tight with chains, but there was a side door with a busted lock. I gently pushed it open, wincing as it creaked loudly. Inside it was silent. I stepped in, and the stench hit me, a mix of mold, rot, and stale air. Using my phone's flashlight, I scanned the hallway. The wallpaper was peeling, the carpet stained, and graffiti covered the walls. Doors to apartments lined both sides, some barely hanging on their hinges. As I slowly moved down the hallway, I peered into apartments 1 and 2, all of them empty, full of trash, busted furniture, signs of squatters, and drug remnants. This building had probably been abandoned for years, if not a whole decade. I climbed up the stairwell to the second floor. Same story. Total emptiness, decay, silence. Checked each apartment, nothing. Then I went up to the third floor, my hands trembling and heart pounding. There it was, apartment 8, at the far end of the hall. Unlike the others, this door was shut tight, no damage. The number 8 shining in polished brass. I stood there, frozen for a moment. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I was after answers. I reached out, grabbed the handle, and turned it. The door swung open smoothly, without a hint of noise. Stepping inside, I felt my breath snag in my throat. The place was astonishingly spotless, like someone actually lived there. All the other apartments were falling apart, but not this one. The walls were a soothing blue with not a crack in sight. The carpet was a pristine beige with those satisfying vacuum lines. The air was fresh, a hint of soap and coffee, with not a whiff of mold. I walked further in, my legs shaky with disbelief. The living room was fully decked out. A cozy brown couch, a tidy coffee table, a TV on its stand, all perfectly arranged. It felt lived in, like a real home. My attention was caught by photos on the walls. As I moved closer, the faces came into focus, and my heart skipped. There they were, pictures of my family, me, my wife, and our son, Michael. They showed moments from his past. First day at school, his 10th birthday, a Christmas morning, even his high school graduation, the very same pictures I had at home. How did they end up here? My hands trembled as I held one of the frames, the glass free of dust. These photos had been put up not long ago. Glancing at another wall, I noticed more pictures, but they felt off. They showed Michael in his 20s, 30s. He passed away at 19, so these couldn't be. Yet there was no doubt it was him, laughing with strangers at a restaurant, posing in a graduation gown at some college, even standing in front of this building, older but undeniably him. I reached for my phone, needing to document all this, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking, resulting in nothing but blurry images. I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. This couldn't be real. In the kitchen, the oddities continued. Clean dishes sat on the rack, a coffee mug with a bit left in it, still warm to the touch. The fridge was full, milk, eggs, leftovers, all fresh as if someone had just done the grocery run. I checked the milk. It had another 5 days until expiry. Clearly someone was here, eating, living, but why here in an abandoned building set for demolition? On the fridge, a note tacked under a magnet almost stopped my heart. It was written on lined paper, that handwriting unmistakable. Michael's, just like he'd done in school. I pulled it down, my eyes scanning the words. Dad, if you're reading this, I'm lost. I woke up here 3 weeks back with no clue how. An ID says I'm Marcus Powell, 38, working at some factory, living a life that's not mine. But inside, I'm Michael. I remember you, Mom, the accident. I felt it all, and then, I'm here, someone else, missing 20 years. They call me Marcus. I'm Michael. I don't belong here. Help me make sense of this. I read through it all until my eyes began to water, gently folded it up, and tucked it into my pocket. I wandered over to the slightly open door of the bedroom and walked inside. The bed was neatly arranged, and the dresser had all sorts of memories on it. The closet was filled with men's clothes that looked like what Michael would wear. On the nightstand, a wallet and some keys grabbed my attention. Curious, I opened the wallet and found a driver's license that showed a guy who looked like an older version of Michael. Same eyes, same old bike accident scar from when he was 7. But the name was Marcus James Powell, born on April 12, 1986. Michael's exact birthday. I collapsed onto the bed, legs giving out beneath me. Michael, my son, who'd been gone for 20 years, somehow lived on here with a different name, in a life he didn't remember. How was this even a thing? I grabbed my phone, my mind racing about calling the police to get some answers. But there I sat, frozen, wondering what I'd even say to them. My son, who I'd laid to rest ages ago, was alive but had zero memory of his past life. They'd probably think I'd lost my marbles. I decided against making the call right then because I needed more info. I had to figure out what was actually happening before I dragged anyone else into this whirlwind. For the next couple of hours, I turned that apartment inside out, examining every corner. Amidst the mess, I stumbled upon a pile of bills all addressed to Marcus Powell, dating back 5 whole years. Electricity bills, water, even pay stubs from Moorfield Manufacturing, all hinting he was living a pretty ordinary life. In one of the drawers, I found a lease signed from 3 years ago. The name on it said Marcus Powell, but the handwriting eerily resembled my son Michael's style. Then I uncovered some medical records, hospital notes, prescriptions, even a neurology file stuffed away in another drawer. I sank onto the couch and delved into every sheet of paper. What I read was hard to believe. The documents detailed how Marcus Powell was taken to County General Hospital on the night of November 3rd, 2005, the very same night in hospital where my son had died. He'd been in a horrific car wreck, sustaining multiple injuries, including serious head trauma. He was in a coma for 6 days and then woke up with no recollection of who he was. His memory was wiped clean. He had no ID on him, so he was marked as a John Doe. The hospital kept him for 3 weeks, but no family showed up. I read those words over and over. November 3rd, 2005, the day Michael died. The same hospital, similar accident. My hands shook as I continued reading. After leaving the hospital, social services stepped in, offering temporary housing and helped him get new ID under Marcus Powell, since his real identity was unknown. Starting from scratch, he built a new life, despite being a stranger to himself. He went through years of therapy, battling with depression, anxiety, and confusion from not knowing who he truly was, yet he kept going. In his medical records, there was a business card attached from Dr. Sarah Chen, a neurologist at County General. I quickly dialed the number. A receptionist answered, and I insisted on speaking with Dr. Chen about Marcus Powell, a case from 2 decades ago. She put me on hold, and after what seemed like an eternity, a woman's voice came over the line. "This is Dr. Chen. May I ask who I'm speaking with?" she inquired. I introduced myself as David Porter, explaining that my son Michael was killed in an accident on November 3rd, 2005, at their hospital. On the same night, they treated a John Doe with the same injuries, who eventually became Marcus Powell. I begged for an explanation about that night. There was a moment of silence. "Mr. Porter," she started cautiously, "I remember that unusual case. We had 2 young men come in separately from the same incident site just an hour apart. Both were gravely wounded with severe head trauma. One didn't make it, the other woke up with amnesia. Could there have been a mix-up?" I asked shakily. "Could their charts have been mixed, or the wrong person was mistakenly declared dead?" She paused again, longer this time. "Mr. Porter," her voice was firmer, "are you suggesting we misidentified your son's body?" I pressed on, proposing that something might have gone wrong, thinking maybe the boy who survived was actually my son. I could hear papers rustling in the background. "That's not possible," she insisted. "We rely on fingerprints and dental records when available. We don't make those kinds of mistakes." "So you never got fingerprints from the John Doe, right?" I asked insistently. "No ID, no wallet, just an absolute enigma." An uneasy silence hovered between us. "Mr. Porter, I understand you're grieving," said the voice on the line, "but what you're suggesting can't happen. You personally identified your son. You saw him." Yes, I had recognized Michael's lifeless form, looked into his face, but in the midst of shock and overwhelming grief, had I somehow gotten it wrong? Was the young man I identified really not my Michael? "Can you pull up records from that night?" I begged. "I need to see everything. Admission times, the treatment details." Dr. Chen let out a deep sigh. We're talking about events over 20 years old, she replied. Mr. Porter, those records are ancient. I can't release them without proper authorization. Frustrated, I pressed on. My son called me twice, I shared, from a number that's dead now. He gave me this address, and here I sit, surrounded by his medical records. Something happened that night that none of us grasped, and I need your help to get to the bottom of it. The silence stretched on, and I feared she'd hung up. But finally she responded quietly. Give me until tomorrow, she said gently. I'll do my best to uncover everything. But Mr. Porter, brace yourself. What you find might be hard to face. Our grief can twist our perception of reality. I thanked her and hung up. Alone in the stillness of the apartment, I was enveloped by glimpses of a life my son had led. A life he never should have had under any other name. Then 3 weeks ago, something stirred his memories, bringing back who he once was. I couldn't bring myself to leave the apartment. I sat on the couch the whole night, hoping against hope that Michael would come through the door or that the phone would ring. Neither happened. Sometime in the quiet urgency of hope, I drifted into sleep. When I awoke, sunlight saturated the room. My phone displayed 9:23 a.m., and there were 6 missed calls, all from Dr. Chen. I called her back immediately, and she answered on the first ring. Mr. Porter, she began, her voice trembling, I've uncovered something important. Can you come to the hospital? I need to show you face to face. Driving to County General Hospital felt like a journey through a time warp. It hadn't changed a bit from 20 years ago when they broke the news of Michael's death. Same entrance, same parking lot. It was surreal. Dr. Chen was waiting for me in the lobby. Her graying hair was pulled back neatly, but she looked as if sleep had eluded her too. Come with me, she said without preamble. She led me up to a small office on the 3rd floor, closing the door behind us. Her desk was piled high with files and paperwork. I spent the whole night searching through archives, she explained, gesturing for me to sit across from her. What I've discovered is mind-boggling, and you need to see it. She opened one hefty file, laying out documents on the desk. On November 3, 2005, 2 patients were brought in from the same car accident at the same intersection. Patient A arrived at 11:52 p.m. in grave condition with severe head trauma and multiple internal injuries. He was pronounced dead at 12:17 a.m. on November 4th. You identify this person as your son, Michael Porter. She handed me a document, a death certificate from Michael James Porter. I recognized it, a painful relic I seldom dared to look at. Patient B arrived 6 minutes after, at 11:58 p.m., Dr. Chen went on, also in serious condition with critical head injuries, but stable enough for surgery. After a 7-hour operation, he lived, though he fell into a coma. 6 days later, he awoke with complete retrograde amnesia, no recollection of anything prior to the crash. With no ID found, he became our John Doe. She opened another file showing me charts and photos. This is Marcus Powell, the John Doe who survived. She turned the laptop towards me, displaying photos side by side. One from 2005 in the hospital, a young man battered and bruised unconscious. The other a more recent driver's license photo, Marcus Powell, older but unmistakably the same. Stunned, I studied those images. That's my son, I whispered. The young man on the left was unmistakably Michael. I saw it in his eyes, the line of his jaw, features etched in my memory. That's him. That's Michael. Dr. Chen leaned in, all serious and focused. What's puzzling, Mr. Porter, she began, is that I checked the original records from that night. Both folks came from the same accident scene. Both were driving cars involved in that crash. But the police report only talks about one accident at the intersection. A truck ran a red light and hit a sedan. Only 2 drivers, each in their own vehicle. Yet here we are with 2 patients showing almost identical injuries from the same spot at basically the same time. I was nearly at the entrance when I hollered, Marcus! He paused and glanced back. Under the dim lights of the parking lot, I finally got a clear view of him. My heart nearly skipped a beat. Though life's wear and tear showed on his face, there was something uncannily familiar about him. Yeah? His voice was gruff, but held a flicker of curiosity. I cleared my throat, unsure of how to proceed. I, um, you might not remember me, but there's something really important we need to discuss. Can we talk? He hesitated, probably wondering if this was about work. What's this about? The night of March 5th, 20 years ago, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. His expression shifted, perhaps realizing this conversation held weight. All right, Marcus said, gesturing to a quieter part of the lot away from the bright lights and the stream of workers. We moved a bit further. My words felt heavy, knowing they could alter our lives. There's a possibility, I stammered out, that you're not who you think you are, that you had another life before this. He frowned, arms crossed. What makes you say that? With a sense of urgency, I started to share what Dr. Chen had told me, the crash, the mix-up, the chilling similarities. He went quiet, taking it all in, then laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Is this some kind of joke? A scam? I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I get how wild this sounds, but if there's even a slim chance, wouldn't you want to know? Marcus paused, his wariness starting to wear off as disbelief faded. And how do we find out? I have something, a DNA test kit. Just one swab, a few days, and we'll have answers, I explained, pulling out a small plastic bag. He looked at the swab and back at me, still unsure. What if it turns out to be true? I don't really know, I admitted, but we deserve to find out the truth. For what felt like forever, Marcus just stood there. Finally, he nodded, looking a bit defeated. All right, he said softly, showing a sliver of vulnerability. Let's do it. With slightly shaky hands, he took the swab and followed the steps. Once he finished, I slipped it back in the bag, fully aware that this tiny action could rewrite both our pasts. Thank you, I whispered. He simply nodded, a mix of doubt and hope on his face. I'll probably be seeing you around, he said, heading back to the factory. I watched him melt into the night, my emotions all over the place, clutching the test kit that might soon reveal an unthinkable truth. When I reached the door, stark under the bright lights, I couldn't move forward. Finally, with a clear view, I recognized him. His face had aged, lines now apparent near his eyes, a sharper jawline. But it was unmistakably Michael's face, just 2 decades older. His nose was the same, his mouth's shape, and that familiar way he ran his fingers through his hair before he stepped inside. A classic Michael move. I watched him vanish through the door and found myself in the lot, overwhelmed by tears I couldn't control. My son, thought to be gone, was here, alive at 38, working late-night shifts. I sat in my car for hours, my mind racing. I couldn't just approach him with a, "Hi, I'm your dad. You were thought dead 20 years back, but you're actually here, clueless about it all." He'd think I'd lost it and probably call security. Proof was essential, a DNA test first. Around 2:15 in the morning, I saw workers spill out for their break. A bunch of folks were hanging out, smoking and sipping coffee from their trusty thermoses. Then I saw him, Marcus, or maybe it was Michael. He was at the very edge of the parking lot, away from everyone else, leaning against a fence, just staring up at the night sky. I got out of my car, heart racing so hard I thought I might pass out, and walked over to him. Each step felt like it took forever. When I got about 20 feet away, he noticed me. We locked eyes. For a few seconds, we didn't move, just stared at each other. Confusion spread across his face, like he kind of recognized me or felt something familiar. "Do you need help?" he asked. His voice was deeper and rougher. Definitely Michael's. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. "Are you all right?" he asked again, moving a little closer, concern written all over his face. "It's like you've seen a ghost." His words almost unraveled me. "Sorry," I finally said. "You just look like someone I used to know." He examined me more closely, a look of uncertainty creeping in. "That's strange," he said slowly. "You look familiar too. Have we met before?" I shook my head. "I don't think so. I'm not from around here. I replied, inching closer until I could see a faded scar on his chin from a bike accident when he was 7. What's your name? I asked. Marcus. He hesitated. Marcus Powell. And you? I almost blurted out David, almost let the truth slip, but stopped myself. John, I fibbed. John Williams. He nodded, still puzzled. This might sound a bit off, he ventured, but it feels like I know you, like you might have been in one of my dreams. My throat felt tight. Could be, I murmured. He laughed, uneasy. Sorry, it probably sounds weird. I've been having bizarre dreams lately, really intense things about a life I don't seem to remember. What kind of dreams? I asked, sensing his unease. It's silly, he shrugged. Probably just stress. My therapist says it's my brain trying to piece together lost bits of my past. Some accident years ago wiped my memory, so sometimes my mind just fills in the blanks with made-up stories, he explained, rubbing his face. Lately, the dreams have become something else. I see people, strangers who seem like family, places I've never been but feel like home. And there's this older man who keeps appearing, always looking sad, always watching, like he's meant to be my father. But I don't remember ever having one. I fought to keep my composure. He was dreaming of me. What does he look like? I asked, barely a whisper. In the dreams, your father? He studied me closely. He looks like you, he said quietly. Exactly like you. A heavy silence settled between us. He moved a bit closer. Who are you, really? He asked, searching my face. Why do I feel like I should know you? I wanted so badly to tell him everything, to hold him and never let him go, but I kept it together. I lost someone a long time ago, I said. Someone who looked like you. I thought maybe I saw him in you. I'm sorry for bothering you. I turned to leave before I crumbled completely. Wait, Marcus called out. I stopped in my tracks. What was his name? The person you lost? He asked, looking at me with eyes that were so familiar. I stared right at Marcus and said his name out loud. He went stiff. Suddenly he looked shocked and scared, and something else I couldn't quite figure out. That can't be, he whispered. How do you know that name? My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I asked him. He seemed really shaken, his face gone pale. I've been having these dreams, he explained. In them, everyone calls me Michael, not Marcus. Michael. I wake up confused because that's not my name. Yet it's all I hear in the dreams, like it's meant to be mine. With shaking hands, Marcus pulled out his phone. 3 weeks ago, I found this on my notes app when I woke up. It's definitely my handwriting, but I don't remember writing it. He showed me the screen, and it was just a list of, I am Michael, I am Michael, I am Michael, typed over and over until there was no room left. I thought I was losing my mind, Marcus confessed, his voice unsteady. I figured my amnesia was just messing with me. But then you, a total stranger, mentioned the name from my dreams. How's that even possible? With shaky hands, I fished out a DNA test kit from my pocket, nearly dropping it. I have a favor to ask, I said. Even though we don't know each other, please trust me. Would you be okay if I took a DNA sample? Just a cheek swab. It's painless. Only takes a second. Marcus glanced at the kit, then back at me, caught between suspicion and curiosity. Why? What's going on? He questioned. I locked eyes with him, a face that seemed so familiar. I'm afraid you might be my son, I revealed. I think you're Michael, and that maybe, just maybe, you've been alive all this time. He didn't budge, just stared, trying to wrap his head around it all. His eyes held fear, confusion, and maybe a hint of hope. Your son passed away, he said eventually, voice flat. You've said before that you lost him, meaning he's gone. I nodded, tears streaming down. I laid him to rest 2 decades ago. I watched as he was buried. For 20 years, I've gone to his grave every week, but 3 weeks back, I got 2 calls from a number that had been dead for 19 years. The voice on the line sounded confused and gave me an address. Where you live. When I arrived, your place was filled with photos of my family, of you, and a note in my son's handwriting saying he was lost. Marcus recoiled a bit, looking pale. That's impossible, he said, though his voice trembled. This is insane. I lifted the DNA kit again. Prove me wrong, I urged. Take the test. If I'm out of my mind, it'll be negative, and we never have to see each other again. But if I'm right, if you're Michael, don't you want to know? Don't you want answers? Pressing his hands to his mouth like he was holding back a cry, he muttered, I died. In my dreams, I remember dying. The crash, the impact, then darkness. I recall it ending. I remember too, I said, getting the call that you were gone, identifying you, every second of your funeral. But what if we got it wrong? What if no one truly knew what happened that night? Marcus shut his eyes, and when he opened them, they were wet with tears. If what you're saying is true, he began slowly, I've lost 20 years. 20 years I could have had with you, my family. How do I reclaim all that time? We'll face it together, I promised, offering the kit once more. Let's uncover the truth. He faltered before agreeing with a nod. All right, he whispered. Struggling not to tremble, I tore open the package, took out the swab, and told him, Open your mouth. He did, and I gently swabbed the inside of his cheek, then sealed it. How long until we find out? He asked. About 2 days, I replied. A doctor I know at County General Hospital will run the comparison. Marcus hugged himself tightly. What do I do in the meantime? He wondered. How do I act normal when everything I know might be a lie? I didn't have an answer but said, May I call you? Can I share my number? He nodded and took out his phone. I gave him my number and watched as he saved it. What should I call you? He asked. That question hit hard. Whatever seems right, I replied. John, David, or perhaps we'll wait until we're certain. He saved it as John and looked at me with an anguished expression. I need to tell you something, he started, and I don't mean it to be hurtful. What is it? I asked. He inhaled deeply, shakily. If the test says I'm really your son, I don't remember being him. I don't remember you. I've been Marcus Powell for 20 years. That's all I know. Even if the DNA shows I'm Michael Porter, I don't know if I can become him again. Who knows if that person's even there anymore? His words felt like a blow to my heart, but he was right. Even if this was Michael, he wasn't the Michael I lost. That young man, just 19, was lost forever. I understand, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I just need the truth. We'll work out the rest later. He nodded and then, unexpectedly, he reached out and gently touched my shoulder. I'm sorry, he said, for everything you've endured, for everything you've lost. It doesn't matter if I'm him or not. I'm sorry. Then he turned away, walking back toward the factory as I just stood there, watching until the break of dawn. A couple of days later, I got a call from Dr. Chen. I was back in my apartment, anxiously waiting for the results. When the phone rang, I hesitated, only picking up after the third ring, gripped by fear of her news. Mr. Porter, she said when I answered. There was something tight and strange in her voice. The results are in. I need you to sit down. I sank onto the couch, the very one where I discovered the note. Tell me, I urged. She hesitated briefly. It's a match, she informed me. Marcus Powell is your biological son. Michael is alive. I don't recall my exact words to Dr. Chen after that. I probably thanked her or asked for the official confirmation. Once the call ended, I found myself sitting in silence for what felt like an eternity. My son was alive. The DNA test confirmed it. Michael James Porter didn't die on November 3rd, 2005. Someone else's name was on that grave. My son had been living under a different identity, 2 states away, for 20 years, and I had missed it. His entire life during his 20s and 30s vanished. Those years were lost to both of us. I called Marcus. He picked up instantly. It's positive, I said, my voice sounding empty. The DNA test. You're Michael. You're my son. Silence echoed back, a long, painful pause. Then I heard him break down, not with quiet tears, but with deep, gut-wrenching sobs. I don't know what to do, he confessed between breaths. I don't know how to be him. I don't remember him. I started crying too. For 10 minutes we stayed on the line, both of us immersed in tears, breathing deeply, trying to grasp this new reality. "Can we meet?" I asked at last. "Can we sit down and work through this?" He hesitated. "Yeah," he replied. "Yeah, I need to see you. I need to get my head around this." A few hours later, we met at a diner. I arrived first, taking a seat by the window. When he walked in, I stood up without thinking. He paused when he saw me. We just looked at each other across the room. Then he slowly walked over and sat across from me. In the light of day, I could see Michael in his face, yet I also saw the person he had become, a stranger shaped by years we hadn't shared. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted, his voice raw, still cracked from crying. "I've spent my whole adult life not knowing who I was. Now I learn the truth, but it doesn't feel real. It feels like someone else's story." I nodded silently. "I buried you," I confessed. "I grieved for you. I visited your grave weekly. I kept your room untouched, and you were alive all along." He buried his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I know sorry can't fix 20 years, but I'm sorry you endured that." "This isn't your fault," I told him. "None of this is your fault." Something went wrong that night. The hospital messed up. You woke up with no memory and they never connected the dots. Nobody is to blame. Once I started to lay blame, anger boiled up inside me. I was furious at the hospital, the police, and everyone responsible for the colossal mistake that stole 2 decades from us. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked, searching for a way to move forward, but I was at a loss for answers. "I really can't say," I responded. Even though the DNA proved Marcus was my son, he'd been living as Marcus Powell for so long, with his own job, friends, his whole world, really. I couldn't just ask him to drop all of that and go back to being someone he didn't even remember. He looked at me, tears welling up in his eyes. "I want to try," he said. "I want to discover who I used to be, who you are, and reclaim the life I've missed out on. Even if my memories don't fully return, I'm willing to give it a shot." His words ignited something inside me, a glimmer of hope I hadn't felt in ages. "Then we take it slow," I suggested. "We spend time together. We talk. I'll share stories from your past, and you bring me up to date with your present. We'll figure it out, one step at a time." He reached out across the table, his hand shaking a little. As I held it, I couldn't help but notice how it felt bigger and rougher, yet still seemed so familiar. Holding his hand again felt overwhelming, like finding a lost piece of my heart. We ended up staying in that diner for about 4 hours. I told him stories about his childhood, his first words, his favorite toys, that time he broke his arm falling from a tree, his graduation, and his dreams of going to college. He listened, soaking it all in like it was from someone else's life. And maybe to him it was, but there were brief flickers in his eyes that showed some things felt familiar. We swapped phone numbers properly this time, not as John Williams and Marcus Powell, but as David Porter and Michael Porter, father and son. Over the next 3 months, we met up each week. Sometimes we chose the diner, other times we'd hang at his apartment. He even came to my house and just stood at the doorway to his old room, looking at the posters and books. "It feels like a museum," he said softly, "like I'm looking at relics from someone else's world." I talked to him about his mom, how she had remarried and moved on. He wasn't ready to see her, and maybe he never would be. Some wounds go deep, and I understood that. I reached out to the cemetery to have the grave checked. Tests revealed the body was actually a 19-year-old named Christopher Hayes, a runaway with no family. He had died in Michael's place and was buried with my son's name. I arranged for his remains to be given a proper grave, correctly identified this time. Once the DNA results were settled, the strange calls stopped. Michael's number wasn't a mystery anymore. Whatever or whoever had crossed those 2 decades to bring us back together had finished its work. I got my son back, not as the boy I lost, but as the man he'd become. The years we missed were gone forever, but we had today. We had a future. We had a miraculous second chance. I thought he'd been lost forever, my grief buried with him. Then one day he reached out, not from some unreachable beyond, but simply from being found. Now he was home,